David Soto with you. It is a Monday, and it is my pleasure to welcome in studio a candidate for the United States Senate seat that Wyoming has. It is available here in 2018. We've got candidates in the primary coming up on August 21st. We're just over a month away. Dave Dodson is in studio with me. Good morning. How are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Actually, just turned that mic towards you there just a little bit. There we go. Sorry about that.
That's better?
That is a lot better. I appreciate the time this morning. Thanks for coming in studio. And I remember hearing you were one of the first out on the campaign trail to get to kind of your word and message out about putting Wyoming first. And I guess from your perspective, how have things gone here as you've kind of crisscrossed the state numerous times here so far, Dave?
Oh my gosh. We've my wife and I, Wendy, we live in our RV. We started end of February in 40-degree below weather in Rock Springs, where we launched the campaign.
Oh wow.
And the other day we were knocking on doors in 115-degree above zero weather, meeting people. So I think now we're meeting sometimes we're meeting the same person for the fifth time. They're like, I got it, you're going to put Wyoming first.
Has that been received well from your perspective, your motto of putting Wyoming first?
Yeah, I mean, it's a simple motto or value that I think we all embrace, which is it's time that our politicians put us, in this case Wyoming families, ahead of donors and special interests in our own careers, or excuse me, in their own careers.
Okay. Talk about kind of your reasoning. I mean, because part of this ties into your motto, but the reason why you decided to run in the race this year.
Yeah, as you know, David, I've not run for office before in my life. I was in business, and I had a trucking company and an auto parts company, and we ended up kind of expanding into 22 states and good middle-class jobs for people. I had the Teamsters and IBW working for me, everyone get along, and I thought that was it. And then I looked around after my partner took over the company, and I thought, man, like things are not going well for both our state and our nation. And I kept apologizing to my daughters, telling them, it didn't used to be this way, where half the country hated the other half of the country, and we couldn't get things done. And then I looked around, and I was talking to Wendy, my wife, and I said, you know what? We need some new blood. We need some change. And so it was around really November, December that I decided to do this.
Well, you've been in the state for a little while now. Dave's a transplant kind of like me, because you grew up in LaPorte. I'm a native of Fort Collins, born and raised there. So you got a couple of Dave and a David who are from northern Colorado.
Yeah, but I transplanted a long time ago.
So did I. I've been here well over 20 years now. So actually coming up on 3 decades here. So we're both kind of transplants. Talk about some of the big issues you feel like this state faces at this present time.
Yeah. So the biggest single issue is that you want state or national?
Let's go. Let's talk about in the state.
Perfect.
What do you feel the biggest issues are pressing in this state right now?
Yeah, easy. We have an unhealthy economy, and I know a lot of the conversation is about diversifying the economy. I think about it quite differently. I think it's about creating a healthy economy that's building upon the resources that we have. And the second is we have a healthcare emergency here. I mean, I've talked to so many people who either don't have health insurance at all, or their deductibles are so high that effectively they don't have health insurance. So they're not going to the doctor, they're not going to the dentist, or they're paying ridiculous amounts of money every month. It also makes us uncompetitive, because if an employer has to pay these kind of insurance rates to attract employees, or their employees have to pay it themselves, we're not competitive outside the state. So not only is it bad for the health and well-being of Wyomingites and our neighbors, but it also makes us uncompetitive. And we have a senator who has not lifted a finger to do anything about this.
And I kind of get the sense of you're surprised but not surprised that he hasn't lifted a finger, because he is someone in the medical industry himself, being a doctor, but now he's represented us in Congress. And I know one of the things that you brought up that you were very critical of was the fact that when we went to repeal Obamacare, Senator Barrasso, somebody in the medical field, had nothing available for President Trump to kind of go to. That's something that you've been very critical of here on the campaign trail.
Yeah, I mean, it's what got me started thinking about doing something about it. I mean, when President Trump said, let's repeal and replace Obamacare, and there were problems with Obamacare, obviously still are. And I thought Senator Barrasso had been complaining for 7.5 years about Obamacare, and it wasn't like he had a bad plan or half a plan or an outline of a plan. The guy had no plan at all. And so, now we have people in our state, especially seniors, who bite their pills in half because they cannot afford their prescription drugs. We have a senator there's only 3 senators in America that take in more from pharmaceutical companies than John Barrasso. And these are companies that can't find Wyoming on a map, let alone Laramie on a map.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We're visiting with Senate candidate Dave Dodson in studio with me. You talked about creating a health economy and diversifying the economy. My question to candidates is how do we go about that? How do we go about, diversifying our economy enough, yet still depending upon, the resources that we do have in a positive way? How do we go about that, particularly when you would be representing us at the federal level? How do you go about that and impacting the state, do you think, Dave?
Yeah, so I wrote Dave Dodson's plan to put Wyoming first. You can get it on my website, you can download it. If you click a button, I'll mail it to you. And I've got, just like I have 11 specific points on fixing the healthcare problem, I have 10 specific points on fixing the economy. We're already diversified. We have wool, we have cattle, we have trona, we have coal. We are a diversified economy. That's not our problem. Our problem is it's like, God gave us the foundation of the house. We forgot to build the rest of the house. So we're really great at growing things and building things and or growing things and raising things and pulling things out of the ground. But then we give it to other states to create all the value. That's what we need to be building on. And it's all laid out in the plan, but not just an aspiration like, gee, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? But specific steps that I know we can do and where a U.S. Senator can play a role in that.
If people are not familiar with you, what are some of those specific steps that you have in mind?
Yeah, so for example, we have, we raise our cattle on, open pasture land that most of the rest of the world envies, as opposed to in feedlots. What we should be doing is we should have USDA feedlots or USDA processing facilities. I used to work in a slaughterhouse. That's how I got my way through college. Okay. These are good middle-class jobs. It's not like the slaughterhouses of the day before. So that we have we market our beef as Wyoming beef. That's an example. Another example, U.S. Senator can play a role, is we have these old archaic laws from the 1920s, from the Prohibition era, that don't allow you to sell spirits outside the state. We have oats. We have barley, we have sugar beets, we have corn, we have water with a great image. Remember, you and I were both, back as kids in Colorado, Rocky Mountain spring water Coors. Mm-hmm. We could be branding that into the spirits industry. The problem is that our craft spirits industry here in Wyoming, we have about a half a dozen great companies, can't sell outside the state. If you're from a rural, if you're in California, you've got a great in-state market. But if you're in a small state like Wyoming, you have to sell out of state. We don't have a senator who understands what it's like to live in a rural state and how rural states need to be represented. You and I grew up in, LaPorte, Colorado. It doesn't get much smaller than that. I understand the needs of a rural state, whereas John Barrasso grew up outside of Philadelphia.
We're talking with Senate candidate Dave Dodson in studio with me. You are somebody who is a proponent of term limits. Obviously, that has kind of been hit and miss with folks in this state in terms of how long people can serve. We've seen people serve a length of time. We've seen people serve just a short amount of time because they want to put kind of self-imposed term limits. What do you think would be kind of a good term limit, so to speak?
Easy. 2 terms, 12 years for a senator, and done. That is plenty. And in 1995, we almost got term limits passed. The
Right.
Republicans voted overwhelmingly for it. The Democrats voted against it. I think a lot of that was a backlash with Newt Gingrich and the contract with America. I lay out a specific plan on how to get term limits passed. I would need, the help of Liz Cheney and Mike Enzi to do so. But there's a specific path to do that when you have 82% of Americans wanting to do it. And I feel so strongly about term limits. John Barrasso has been there for 2 terms now. He's now worked his way up to the 14th wealthiest senator in America, if you can believe that. Maybe it's time for him to take a break and give someone else a chance.
All right, we're visiting with Senate candidate Dave Dodson. And this is for the U.S. Senate seat. You're on the Republican ticket, so you're going to be in the primary coming up just over a month. August 21st is the big day for everybody to vote in the primary across the Cowboy state. Did you ever think about going independence-wise so that you could get your name on the ballot in November?
I did, and originally I thought I was going to run as an independent. I'm a Reagan Republican. I've been a Republican my whole life. I thought it might make more sense originally to run as a Republican, but under the independent ticket, if you will. But like you said at the start of the program, Wendy and I started this thing in February, and we didn't know if we could get around the state quick enough. But we have, and I think word's gotten out, and also by developing, Dave's plan to put Wyoming first, that's been a way that we've been able to get our message out to everyone. So we got our message out there, and, I am a Republican.
Getting money out of politics, how do we go about that from your perspective this day and age, considering how much money is tied to the political game, so to speak?
Well, money in politics is I think everybody recognizes it. It's a huge problem. I mean, it's one of the problems, one of the reasons we have a problem in our pharmaceutical industry and why we're overcharged by so much is because there's no industry that gives more money to Congress than the pharmaceutical industry. And of course, everybody knows, you know, Al Simpson said the only reason someone gives money to politicians is to buy influence. So we have to get rid of that. I am an old school one guy, one vote, okay? The humblest person in Wyoming should have just as much power as the richest person in Wyoming. We got to get money out of politics. Now, how to do that? There's some great initiatives like Wyoming's Promise, which I am strongly in favor of, but some of those are complicated because they involve free speech and Supreme Court. I have 3 rule changes. There's plenty of rules about campaign finance already. 3 rule changes that I think would fundamentally alter the balance of power between money and politics, and they're written in, you know, Dave's plan to put Wyoming first. But for example, one of them is not to fundraise while you're in office. So I'm going to walk the talk, by the way. I am pledging not to raise any money until 6 months before re-election. All of my energy will be towards my voters or the families of Wyoming. And by the way, David, if you send me $1 while I'm in office, I'm going to send it back. I'm going to work 100% for the people of Wyoming.
All right, we're talking with Dave Dodson, again, candidate for U.S. Senate here in Wyoming, running on the Republican primary coming up August 21st. So much of the big money, you talked about it in political action committees. Well, let me go back to one point. I would love to see, and I don't think we get it as much here in Wyoming because I think the politics here in Wyoming is pretty much on the up and up, but sometimes I just get tired of all the constant campaigning. I mean, it seems like we got done with Trump being elected president. It was like, all right, what's our plan for 2020? And who's going to run? Who's going to run in midterms? And you hear that more on the national level, I guess, Dave, more than you do on the on the Wyoming level. But every once in a while, you kind of get it around here. I almost wish that we could limit campaigning, period. You know, to so much time before a primary and X amount of time before the general election, just so that folks can maybe concentrate on their job a little bit more. Do you kind of feel the same way in that regard?
Yeah, you know, I have mixed feelings on it because on the one hand, I am completely disgusted with the fact that Congress, our Senate, has taken the summer off to campaign. So they, you know, we no sooner finished the 2016 election, they went to work for about 6-9 months, then took some time off, then worked for about 3 months, and now they're taking the summer off. I think that's appalling. On the other hand, we cannot make it a rich man's game or an incumbent's game. Okay. And so, you know, Wendy and I are winning this election. And by the way, I don't know if you saw the Casper Star Tribune had us up by, I think, double digits at this point. But we got there because we're knocking on doors and we're meeting people in bars and we're talking to people in restaurants and we're hearing their stories. And that takes time unless you already are an incumbent or have quite a bit of money.
So I understand that.
But, you know, here we are because our Congress and our Senate takes so much time in campaigning. We have no immigration bill. We have no health care plan. We have no infrastructure plan. We had, as far as I'm concerned, a sloppy tax plan that was signed at 2 a.m. in the morning with handwriting on the side. We were promised spending cuts by our Senator Barrasso, and 5 months later we passed the second highest spending bill in U.S. history. By the way, to your point, at midnight, which nobody read. And why is that? Because they had vacation the next day. They didn't even make it up. They said, I didn't read it and we have to go tomorrow because we'll have flights tomorrow. So the next morning I saw a tweet from John Barrasso, who was reading Dr. Seuss stories to kids in Casper when he should have been reading that spending plan.
We're visiting with, again, Dave Dodson, Senate candidate, in studio with me. It's one of those situations where, you know, they're even balking at coming back into session just to talk about a Supreme Court justice here, which you would think would be a high priority of our folks in office. You mentioned getting up right now. I'm curious as to what your interaction with Barrasso's campaign has been in terms of trying to get debates and trying to kind of at least get something out there for the Wyoming folks to kind of see where everybody lines up and stacks up on some of these issues. I mean, yes, we can all sit here and read information, and that's great, and you guys have been out and about, but I think some people, it comes down to, well, how are you different than the person next to you in terms of, you know, and we're seeing that a little bit in the gubernatorial debates that have been happening, but what's been the receptive, or any reception at all, in terms of debates for you and Senator Barrasso?
Yeah, you ever played hide and seek before?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I'm doing. He's playing hide and seek. Look, we have a debate that's put on by NPR
Mm-hmm.
and the Casper Star Tribune on August 1st.
Right.
And I'll be there. And I hope on behalf of, I hope Senator Brasso is there on behalf of the Wyoming, public, who needs to be able to see the two candidates side by side, and Charlie will be there as well.
Right.
To see us side by side and make a decision. It's a U.S. Senate seat; they're entitled to it. And I've got criticism about Washington D.C. and about Senator Brasso. Otherwise, I wouldn't be running. But that's not a reason to vote for me. The reason to vote for me is that I put together a positive plan that is specific. And by the way, David, where possible, I put in deadlines for myself. So I'm promising Wyoming, these are things I'll do, these are things I won't do, the things that I want to get done for our state, this is how I would go about it, by when. And in my plan, which I said is available on my website, I actually ask people, please, if you elect me, put this in your kitchen drawer and hang on to it and hold me accountable to it. Because one of the things that hasn't happened in our electoral system is voters holding their representatives and their senators accountable. And that's our job as a senator, as voters.
Well, and you see that kind of in the aftermath of people get elected. I'm in the business, and so we get reaction via social media, and people get appalled. I can't believe people voted for this person or that person, things like that. And it's like, well, did you actually vote? Well, no, I wasn't really interested in the election. Well, don't you want to give yourself an opportunity to vote and things like that? So I don't know. It kind of comes and goes, I guess, a little bit.
No. These are critical issues. We're in a small state. I mean, every vote counts. Look,
it does.
Wyoming isn't even half the size of Denver, so our vote counts here. We've got issues like land use and public and private land, and how we're going to make sure that we protect our land so that it's not a state that's covered with fences and padlocks. I mean, I'm a sportsman. You probably are too.
Yeah.
These are real issues that are facing Wyomingites.
Well, with that, I'm up against the clock here. I greatly appreciate the time. DodsonForSenate.com. That's DODSON for Senate.com is the website. Thank you so much for your time today.
Enjoyed it.